Hey, welcome back to Project Amber. Today I'm going to be discussing buying an ambulance and converting it into a camper van. I get quite a few messages these days from people asking about how I bought the ambulance, what it's like to drive, loads of different questions. And yeah, I thought I'd do a video and just cover it all so you can watch it and have your questions answered rather than me typing the responses over and over again. So I guess we should start back at the beginning. What made me buy an ambulance? Honestly, I don't know. It started off as a bit of a joke, I think. I was looking at transit vans, standard panel vans, sprinters, and then I can't remember why. I went onto eBay and searched ambulances, and this very one popped up 20 miles down the road from my house. So I went and viewed it, and before I knew it, I was handing cash over for it, and I owned an ambulance. And I was thinking, what am I doing? This is crazy. But yeah, it's turned out okay. You do get quite a lot of naysayers when you buy something like this. I've lost count the amount of times I've heard people say, people have died in that. My response to that one is, nobody's died in this van, because you can't be pronounced dead in an ambulance. That needs to be done in the hospital. Yes, there might be horrible things that have happened in this van, but that's the past. If you live in a house that's older than 50 years old, chances are somebody's died in that house. You walk down a street, down small buildings, God knows how many people have died there. People die, get over it. My view on this vehicle is that it did a very noble job. You know, it saved countless more lives than people that ended their life in here. You know, if it wasn't for this vehicle, I dread to think how many people wouldn't be alive today. So, you know, in that respect, I like the fact that I live in an ambulance. So my van was built by a company called McNeely. They make all sorts of emergency vehicles, but they make this boxed ambulance that everybody knows. A lot of people say, I'll get a fiberglass ambulance because they're lighter. But in reality, this Sprinter has a pretty big engine. It can pull this weight and then some. And you think about it, if you're doing this kind of stuff with a camper, like I am, going off-road and stuff, if you smack it off a tree, it's coming through your van. It's just going to knacker your van. Whereas with the aluminium, it's completely solid. I've smashed the box off all sorts of things, the trees, my garden wall, my house. God knows, I've hit it so many times off stuff, and it dents it, but there's no real damage, you know, it's solid. So I'd go for one of these. I know it's a little biased saying go for the Sprinter, go for the McNeely ambulance, but the reason I'm saying about the T1N Sprinter is because this age is just before all the electrical crap come in. There's so much electrics on engines now, and it always goes wrong, and it always is an absolute nightmare to find out where it's gone wrong. Whereas this van, it's got a few sensors on it, but there's not as many as modern engines. It doesn't have an EGR valve. I know the States ones do, but the UK ones don't. I found that out from George after about 3 hours of searching for this non-existent EGR valve. So yeah, they're like the pre-modern engine. They've got a few little bits on that are a bit iffy, but mechanically they're pretty sound. The only real fault is the injectors. You've got to keep an eye on the injectors, make sure they're not kicking out crap. Other than that, the Sprinters, the T1N Sprinters, are pretty bomb-proof. So this originally was built for the NHS. Served 5 years, I think, in the NHS. Then sat in a field for 2 years before the private ambulance service that I bought it off had it. They used it for a couple of years doing events and all sorts of stuff like that. And then the tail lift that was here broke on it, and a few of the bits started going wrong, and they basically deemed it as scrap. So the eBay listing was kind of a last minute, can we kind of shift it onto someone who's crazy enough to buy an ambulance. So when I went to go and view it, I think they wanted 3,000 originally, and with pretty much no bargaining at all, it went down to 2.5. So yeah, on that side of things, you can get an ambulance really cheap. I mean, it's a 2004 Sprinter. It's done a lot of miles. I've just kicked over 300,000 miles, but it's a Sprinter. They'll go forever. I did originally buy this thinking, right, I'll kit it out, do my trip in it, and then when I get home I'll probably just scrap it, because I got it into my head that this van was pretty much at the end of its life. But when it was in service, everything was replaced like for like. If something went wrong with the engine, that was taken out, replaced with OEM genuine parts. If the engine blew up, they would put a full new engine in it. Interior, I found quite a few bodges. There was a few things inside that was just like, what is this? Why have they put this wire in here and God knows what? But mechanically, they can't afford for them to break down. So everything gets done to the highest standard. It's been put in a depot every night when it's not being used. So the rust issue that is pretty predominant on Sprinters, it's not too bad on this. It's pretty good. Even the chassis underneath, there's a few bits towards the back where things have been bolted on and stuff, and that started to really bubble, but it can be sandblasted back and caught. Build quality of the box and everything that's done on it. I mean, this was a £250,000 vehicle when it was built new. So, I mean, they went to nuts with that money. Everything in this van is just built to be indestructible. When I was building it, I had a unit over where the bathroom is, which I moved over to make the kitchen, and I could not pull it apart. It was these special interlocking aluminium panels, and it was just so well built. It was really hard to get apart. That's another reason why I kept all the cupboards. That whole far wall there is original. It's just been tweaked and wrapped and painted and stuff like that, but the actual cupboards in this van are original, because they were that well built. It was kind of like, there's no point pulling them down and building my own wooden ones. They'll never be as strong. So as far as that's concerned, that was done for me. Even if you were to strip out the whole van and start again, you're starting with a box, which, I mean, if you've ever built a panel van, you know you've got the contours on the walls, you've got all sorts of funny shapes, you've got structural panels that are just a nightmare to insulate and panel and do stuff like that. With this, I kept the walls because it's already insulated behind there, but it's so easy to build off. You just got square everything. There's no faffing around cutting stuff in, mitering bits of wood to slot where you need them. It's just all ready to go. It's brilliant. So the box is fully insulated. They insulate them when they build them. So you've got an exterior sheet of aluminium, and then you've got another sheet that's been bent to make like structural supports going down the walls. And then in all of those, they've slid insulation inside them, like Celotex, but on steroids. It's crazy stuff. And then this material on the interior walls is also acts as in like insulation as well. So I kept all that in, apart from here where I had to change and the wall where the telly is, where I had to rip it all off to put new electrics and stuff. All these walls are the ambulance walls. They've just been cleaned and painted. Lance, you're gonna have to come off, mate. Come on, you're getting too hot, and you've dribbled on me. Cheers, mate. Nice one. Soaking now. I'm gonna look up myself. The first things first, when I did get it home, was pulling all the equipment off the walls, all the bits that I knew I wasn't gonna have, and then bleach. I bought, I don't know how many bottles of bleach, and I just went for it. This whole thing was just doused in bleach. I think that's a good day of kind of ripping stuff out, getting everything opened up, making sure all the nooks and crannies are exposed, and then just going for it with all sorts of domestos and bleach. And there are a lot of things on this van that have been perfect for turning it into a camper van. So you've got the 1500 watt pure sine wave inverter. That was, I think I did a Google search on that, and that was about £900. It come with a diesel heater, fully ready to go. It needed a little bit of tweaking to get it going again. It was full of crap, but managed to get it going again. That's about £1,200 worth of kit. It comes with 4 huge batteries. Unfortunately on my van they were dead. I think when it was sat in a field for a couple of years, they just frost got to them in the winter and they were done. But they are massive deep cycle batteries. I think it was 150 amp hours each or something like that, and they had them on 2 separate circuits. So on the ambulance you have 2 battery circuits and you can split them up and do whatever you want with them. On mine, I've changed it for 1 circuit now does solely 230 stuff, the inverter, and the other circuit now does the 12 volt lights, all sorts of different bits in here. So the inverter's got its own dedicated battery cell. So if you do buy an ambulance and you find the batteries are alive, or you can get them on a deep charge and get them back to life, happy days. You've got 4 huge deep cycle batteries, which in comparison would probably set you back about £500. So there's another massive saving. You've got things like lights, the windows are in, doors, everything that you kind of need to do if you're converting, say, a Luton van. you got to put your doors in, you got to put your insulation in, you got to buy all this stuff. Buy an ambulance, it's already there for you. You've basically bought a half-built conversion. Just needs a hell of a lot more cleaning. The electrics and wiring I'll get onto in a minute in detail, because that more falls into the bad points of buying an ambulance. Nightmare. But there is one good point that I'm going to bring up now, and that's the whole loom that runs throughout the van, the ambulance side of it. They've had printed on every single cable the job of what it does and its code. So when you're in your first building, you're pulling wires out and stuff, you think, right, I'll use I think the ones on the walls were named jack, like jack 1, 2 and 3, 12-volt jack. You can trace that right back into the cab where it's powered up in the main control box, and you think, right, put a little label on that, that'll be my USB port. The lights run up, every electrical part in the van you can track back and reuse that wire. And then later on, troubleshooting, really easy, because you're not having to like buzz out wires, you don't have to do anything like that. They're all there, they're all labelled, you know exactly what wire does what. As long as you have your little book of wonder like I have. If you build a van, you need a book. Doesn't matter how many notes you put on your phone, you need a book. Head height is another massive bonus. I mean, I'm only 5'8". I could probably do in a normal kind of panel van, but having that space to move around, it just feels so much bigger in here. It doesn't usually come across on the videos. You look in, you think, it looks a bit dingy, but when everybody comes in, they're like, oh, there's a lot more space than I thought there was going to be. I've got friends that are 6 foot, 6'2", and they've come in, and even they've said, I mean, their heads is kind of just about touching the roof, but they're like, it's great. I can actually stand up in here without kind of having my neck cranked. A question that a lot of people ask me about the van is MPG, fuel usage, how is it on the road and stuff like that. So this is the 416 Sprinter, so it's got 5 cylinders, it's 4.6 ton, but it shifts. That being said, the fuel consumption really isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. City driving, yeah, it's a bit thirsty when you're stop-starting traffic, or you're kind of pootling around town, like having to turn around, go through traffic lights. It's a bit thirsty then. Motorways, country lanes, when you're under load and you're just driving, it's amazingly good on fuel. It's no worse than a standard smaller engined Sprinter panel van. I really need to kind of sit down and work out the exact MPG. As a rough estimate, I'd say it's probably about 28 to 32 MPG, which for a 4-ton van, it's good. When the build was finished and I'd either scrapped everything or sold bits on, I totaled that up at £1,000. So the van actually paid me back nearly half of what I paid for it. The tail lift and batteries and all this aluminium stuff on panels that I didn't use, that all went down the scrap heap. There was a big metal wall that separated for where the stretcher went, which is now my shower. That I couldn't even lift it. I had to call a friend to come and help me lift it out of the van. Rails, lights, there was so much metal and scrap that come out of this. The seats, the 2 seats that were here, I sold them for £200 each. The seat at the back there I sold for £150. The clock that was, it had like all sorts of special heart monitoring things on it. It had all these little LEDs that lit up on it. That sold for £200 alone. The whole pulling your van apart and selling the bits on, either selling them off or scrapping it, you get a hell of a lot of money back from the van you've bought. So instead of paying 2.5 for the van, once everything was gone, I'd basically paid 1.5. But £1,500 for a Sprinter with a massive engine, with a box on the back that is basically half built for you. Starting to make sense buying an ambulance now, right? Okay, I've got written down here security, very secure. It is very secure. The box is really secure. We've got exterior window, and then a void where the blinds used to go, ripped them out because they were... and then here is, I think it's like 10mm perspex. So you do a window on the outside, you still ain't getting in. There is no chance you're going to get through that perspex, and if you do, you're going to make way more noise and rouse up all sorts of suspicions before you get in the van. The doors are 1 inch thick, and there's no chance you're going to get a crowbar behind them. and both doors are bolted with massive catches at either the top and bottom. So like with a flimsy camper van or a sliding door panel van where they can kind of like bend panels out of the way or pull the doors out of the way and stuff, you ain't getting through the ambulance doors. Yeah, they can still get in the cab, they can still do the cab like they would any other van, but my cab door has a huge lock on that, so once I lock that from in here and get out the back, there's pretty much no chance of anyone getting in here. Mine also come with CCTV. I know some don't come with it, but this one has it, so there's an added security feature there as well. Despite the size and weight of it and the fact that it's on standard road tyres, this thing is really good off-road. It's amazingly good off-road. This is only a two-wheel drive van. You can get four-wheel drive ambulances and four-wheel drive sprinters, but from what I've been told, the price just skyrockets the moment you've got four-wheel drive on a sprinter. You're paying double, triple. It'd be nice to have four-wheel drive. It would be a truly go-anywhere vehicle then, but I didn't see any when I was looking around. This is two-wheel drive, but it handles itself pretty good. I've had it in some places where I'm thinking I've really done something stupid. I should not be here, and it's just kind of carried on. I don't know if it's the fact that it's got twin wheels on the back and there's just that like extra double amount of traction, but it will slip and slide and you'll feel the back going, and then it'll grab itself some traction and carry on, and slip the other way, carry on, and then it's away. I've been stuck twice on this whole trip. I really should have been stuck 20. There'd have been so many times where I should have just got completely bogged down, but the van just carried on. So basically, to sum up the good points, if you buy an ambulance, you've basically got a half-built camper van ready to go. Needs a bit of a clean, granted, but insulation done, doors done, windows done, your furniture, if you want to keep it, done. You've got inverters, you've got diesel heaters, you've got air conditioning, you've got all sorts of added extras that would have cost you a fortune to buy, and God knows how many man hours to do depending on your skill, and it's already there for you. And what I will say as well is the pros do outweigh the cons, but now I am going to get onto the bad points because there are a few. So it's going to be a real struggle to buy an ambulance with low mileage. They're pretty much all diesels unless you're from the States. They maintain them to really good standards, but things wear out. I've had a few things on this van now where it's just had its day, and they've been on the van ever since it was built. So yeah, you could run into a spat like I have where you can have a month of just things going wrong on the van because it's got 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles on it, and parts perish, parts fall apart, and it can get quite expensive. Right, back onto the electrics, like I mentioned before. Where do I begin with this one? If you don't know anything about vehicle electrics, I'm going to say don't buy an ambulance because it is just ridiculous. So I used to be a coach builder. I've done a few different coach building jobs, doing all sorts of different conversions, and each one of them I've had a little bit of a dabble with electrics, so I know enough to get me by. But this was just, it was like some out of Star Trek. If it wasn't for my dad, who's an actual electrician, I think this project would have just come to an end pretty quickly, and I'd be wheeling a completely useless sprinter van to the scrapyard. So with this model, everything is interlinked. The whole loom that goes from the ignition, the lights, everything on the van side of the electrics gets spliced open, goes through the control box of the ambulance, and then back to do its job. And you have to separate that. The only real option with the electrics is to rip it out. When I first bought it, it had an exterior plug-in which I was going to reuse, an intelligent split charge system which also had a complete cut-off switch and charger and all sorts of stuff, and I thought, oh, this is great, I'll be able to use this for the camper side of things. No, it did not go well at all. It just went nuts. What I was trying to do with it was take it from having an overnight charge where nothing was plugged in to using it for, like, if I was on a campsite. So while I was inside the van, plug it in, have the mains charging everything up and using it. It did not like that. It was not set up for that at all, and it just completely knackered it. So yeah, the van was completely dead, and what we basically had to do was email the company that built the van and say, look, can you give us the diagrams to the van, because I'm doing this, this and this, I'm turning it into a camper van, and I've currently got a completely dead 4-ton lump of useless ambulance on my drive at the minute. Help, basically. And they were surprisingly good. I'd have thought they'd be like, no, this is classified stuff, you can't have it. But they gave me, I think it was like 8 pages of diagrams, and it was all just like, what is this? In fact, I've got it somewhere. Let me get it. This is the box with all the paperwork for the build and the ambulance. Suspension manual, circuit diagrams, circuit diagrams, circuit diagrams. Oh, it's ridiculous. This is what they sent me. We've kind of crossed out the names as we managed to disconnect them and put them back through. Don't know if you can read it from here, but we've got things like D plus sense, field drive, headlight left hand side high in, left hand side low in. So like the to make the lights wig-wag, basically. To go off that, I ain't got a clue either. And it all basically come down to one huge 30 odd pin plug, and we had to go through all of that and find it, cut it off and reattach it to the original van loom. Then there's that, which is the control box. Every single one of those has a job in it and what it does, and all of these are little relays and they have to be in the right order, and if you switch them round like we did, your van doesn't work, like at all. Hello, you. Do you want to take over, mate? What was your biggest thought on converting the ambulance? You don't even know, dear. You were too busy being small and shitting in here, potty training, weren't you? I'd probably say that this isn't. Hello. Do you need to go out? Yes, yes you do. I think it'd be pretty hard to find an ambulance that hasn't got damage on it. Dinks, scratches, scrapes, ripped trim panels and stuff. My door has been crushed from when they closed the door before they lifted the tail lift up, and they've kind of really badly fillered that back in. But yeah, there's knocks and dinks all over it from out in use. It didn't really bother me. It's not really a thing I'm that fussed about. But if you want a really straight, perfect looking van, you're going to be spending a lot of time and effort kind of sorting that out, because it's 5mm aluminium. You're not going to be able to get that pulled out by a paintless dent remover or something like that. So the question I get asked most of all is, how much does the van weigh and what kind of license do I need to drive it? So the van is rated at 4.9 tonne. It got rated from 4.6, but the van's actual weight is about 3.8 to 4, depending on water, fuel, stuff like that. A lot of people say, oh yeah, well I can just rip it all out, downplate it, and then I can keep my standard license. You can do that technically, but your build would have to be really carefully planned, really lightweight, and probably quite basic. And the last thing you want to do is get caught up in Europe overweight, because you're just in for a world of shit there. So my advice would be to keep the weight as is, because downplating alone costs about 200-300 quid. Keep it as is, go in for your HGV license, and then you've got all the weight in the world to play with. My van is, I've still got what, 1,200 kilograms to play with, so I could fit another water tank if I wanted to, an auxiliary diesel tank. I could build a fold out lift up roof and have an upstairs if I wanted to. You think I'm joking? I'm actually looking at doing it. Big mezzanine bunk bed, it's gonna be awesome. But tax isn't really an issue, because you're changing it to a camper van anyway, so tax, insurance, all that kind of stuff is still pretty cheap. You're not paying more because it's a higher weight, really. So yeah, my advice is just get the license, build your van however the hell you want then, and then you know you're not going to be overweight at any point and get into trouble. To convert the van over from ambulance to camper van was a bit of a ball ache. I got the van home. Within a week of owning it, I got a letter through the post saying, right, we need to see your blue light license, which obviously I don't have. So I had to call up the DVLA, which I'm sure you're all aware is an absolute whale of a time. And they were like, right, okay, we'll put a marker on your van until it's all changed and you've proven that you've converted it and you're paying tax on it. It's like, right, okay, fantastic. So that had to be done pretty quickly. You have to do all the paperwork, send them photos of the bed, the fact that there's windows in the van, sink, cooker, all the kind of things that basically make it obvious that it's now a camper van. But because mine wasn't finished, I kind of had to bodge it a little bit. Bit naughty, I know, but I needed to use it. I needed to drive it around so I could get the materials to build it. Kind of catch-22. First time I sent it off, it got sent back because I didn't send a check, because they told me it was an electric payment, which it wasn't. Second time it got sent back because they told me I hadn't paid enough, even though it was the amount the guy on the phone told me. The third time it went through, and about a week or two after that I got a check back for the difference between the first and the second payment. So the first amount was actually right. I don't know what happened there, just the joys of the DVLA, I guess. But unlike I had, if you have alternative ways of getting around, just take it off the road and convert it completely off the road. What else? Finding parts is pretty difficult. I needed some trim bits where they'd been ripped and bits missing, and I wanted a door for here, which I don't think they did another door like this, despite the fact the aperture's the same. I could not find a door for the right hand side, so I wanted to get one of these doors, put it there, so I had double doors. Could not find any doors, couldn't find them anywhere. I think there is one breaker's yard in the whole of the UK, but I emailed them, didn't get an email back. Apparently most ambulances either just get scrapped or they go over to Russia or another country and carry on the service over there. So yeah, parts are a bit of a pain to get hold of, but I guess there's not a massive market for people wanting ambulance parts. No, there was a lot of thought gone into this. It's a mid-wheelbase van, which makes it a lot easier to drive than a long wheelbase. You'd have thought it'd have been a long wheelbase as big as possible and they'd have just put anything on it. I can kind of get round short corners. It doesn't really the back end doesn't swing or anything like that. It's just the right size. Driving around cities and like natural parks where there's big car parks and stuff with barriers, that's a bit of an issue. If you're going to go from a small camper van like a T4 Volkswagen or something like that, the size difference is a bit of a shock. Back at home I was going to the cinema to meet up with a few friends and I couldn't get in. I had to park 15 minutes down the road and run back, nearly missed the movie. But that was only really like around cities and stuff like that, and places where there's a lot of people. Out in the sticks, it's not an issue at all. The only thing that gets in the way really is low bridges and trees. And the trees, like I said, it's built really well, so you can just kind of push them out of the way. Right, and that's about it really, I think. I did want to get some direct questions from Instagram and all sorts of places where people have asked me questions and answer them on here. But where I'm at the minute, there is no internet at all, so I can't get them off my phone to write them down and answer back. So I hope this answered the questions everyone's asked. If it hasn't, drop a message in the comments. I'll reply as best as I can. And yeah, if you are thinking about going for an ambulance, I reckon go for it. You're going to get a little bit of stick. A lot of people were like, that's weird, that's gross, people have died in that. But I think it all just boils down really to whether you value people's opinions. I don't really care what other people think or say, so I just crack on with it. Make a great base. They're big, they're secure, they're well built. They're basically half built for you, insulated, windows, doors, furniture. The electrics are run for you to a point. I can't stress enough about ripping out the charging system, just get rid of it. But yeah, they make a pretty good base for a tiny home. Just be prepared to buy a ton of bleach. Yeah, so I hope this answered your questions, hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.